At Manhattan University, a graduate degree is not out of reach. You'll gain real-world skills, credentials employers value, and connections to New York City's top companies. Choose from their new Master of Science degrees in Healthcare Informatics, Digital Marketing and Analytics, Business Analytics, or Financial Analytics, all built around hands-on learning and industry partnerships. Graduate ready to lead, not just work. Take the next step at manhattan.edu/graduate. Manhattan University. Lead the future.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Well, folks, this is the More Money Show on stations all over the country. Thank you so much for listening. We are on every Saturday afternoon and at different times throughout the weekend from 1 to 3 p.m. So thank you for joining. It is a privilege and pleasure to be hosting this show. Got a great show lined up. My first guest, by the way, is going to be Mark Meadows, who, as you may recall, was one of Donald Trump's chiefs of staff when he was in his first term. And we're going to learn a lot more about how this White House works, how they make decisions, what kind of guy is Trump to work for and under. And so that should be a fascinating conversation. So I'm going to have on Mark Meadows in a few minutes. So you don't want to miss that, folks. A fascinating guy, and Mark is a great patriot. A couple quick things before we get to our guests today. I want to start with look, this is a tumultuous time for our economy, no question about it. Price of oil went way up over the last couple of days, even higher than I expected. We got a lousy jobs report yesterday, which, nobody likes to see. But I'm a big believer that when we get this war over with in Iran and we get back on track in terms of putting in place the Trump economic policies of lower taxes, less regulation, more energy production, free enterprise, pro-business policies, that we're going to get back onto the very, very productive year that we had last year. And I think things are only going to get better as we rid the world from menaces and dictators that are killing their own citizens. So I tend to be very optimistic about the future. I'm worried about the next few weeks. People are going to be angry that price of gas at the pump could go up to as much as $4 a gallon, but that's only going to be temporary. So we've lived through by the way, anybody over the age of 50 knows we've lived through this so many times. I mean, I remember in the 1970s, late 1970s, when I was a teenager, and we used to have to pack into our car at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning in the Chicago area when it would be in the winters, and it would be, 5 degrees below zero. We'd pack into the station wagon and we'd drive to the gas station, and we would be like 6th, 7th or 8th in line, and we have to wait a half an hour just to get a fill up. And then we have to pay, in today's price, it would be the equivalent of $7 a gallon of gasoline. That was when Jimmy Carter was president. Thank God we have a president who is all in on promoting American energy. One other quick thing I want to say about the economy that I find astounding and astonishing and really something we're celebrating is last month, the month of March, a record amount of money was invested in the United States by venture capitalists, into American businesses, and most of that money went into AI firms like Anthropic and some of the other really big ones. And so this is the biggest investment boom we've ever seen. Now, I know a lot of people are nervous about AI because it's going to change the world, but in a very productive way. And my point is, we need to make sure that the United States of America dominates this technology revolution that is coming, not China. This is the war of the worlds right now between China and the United States. We are well positioned to lead the world in AI development and create, trillions and trillions of dollars of new wealth for all Americans. These are technologies that are literally going to allow, people who are disabled to rise out of their wheelchairs. Blind people will be able to be given sight. I mean, it's so exciting what's going to happen here. 15, 20 years, we might have flying cars. It's just going to be an incredible future. And I only hope that I can live long enough to see this happen. I probably will, because it's just around the corner. So the United States is number one in this area. We have Silicon Valley. We have so many technology centers. We get the best and brightest people from all over the world, and the Yankee ingenuity really makes us well prepared to lead this revolution. And we just have to make sure that it isn't impeded by stupid regulation and high taxation and anti-business policies. But look, I know some of you are worried about things like data centers and AI, and what's this going to mean for my job, your job. We're going to talk about that through the course of the next couple hours. We have a really cool report that Thomas Phillipson and I just did, where Thomas Phillipson was a chief economist for Trump, on how much it would be worth to America if we cured cancer. And this is something that can be done, and we're going to go over some of those preliminary results of that study with you as well. So we'll take a quick break right now to catch our breath. When I come back, the great Mark Meadows will be on with us. This is the More Money Show. I hope you're having a great weekend, by the way.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I'm economist Steve Moore. By the way, I hope you are all getting our Unleash Prosperity hotline about 5 mornings a week. We will email that to you for free. All you have to do is go to unleashprosperity.com and click on hotline, and we will send it to you 5 mornings a week. I know a lot of the people in the White House are reading it. Members of Congress are reading it. CEOs of companies are reading it, and you should be reading it too. So go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up for the hotline, which is absolutely free. I mentioned at the start of the show that I was going to have on my friend and a guy who I so greatly admire and has done such a great service for our country. That's Mark Meadows. Mark Meadows, you all know, served for I think a year and a half or 2 years, I forget how long it was, as Donald Trump's chief of staff in his first term. Mark Meadows also served as a congressman from the great state of North Carolina, and he and I and Larry Kudlow and Art Laffer really were pretty instrumental in getting that first draft done of the tax cut. And without you, Mark Meadows, I don't know if we could have gotten that tax bill done. So anyway, thank you so much for joining, Mark.
No, Steve, great to be with you, and you're very gracious in giving me credit, but it was actually you and Larry Kudlow and Art on the back of a napkin that says, listen, if we can do X, Y, and Z and get that passed. And I looked at it and said, well, that should be easy. And the next thing you know, not only was it signed into law, but it is now permanent. Really,
permanent,
thanks to you and so many of your friends. You are bold enough to say this makes sense, and now Americans across the country are benefiting from those tax cuts.
Well, you were the one who, after we had that famous lunch together where we drafted out a plan, you were the one who got in touch with the president, and he said, yeah, let's go with this. And we got about 80%, maybe more, of what we wanted, which is pretty amazing in politics. And it would not have happened without you, Mark. Okay. So we've got about 10, 12 minutes, and I know how busy you are. So thanks. First of all, very quickly, tell people about Conservative Partnership Institute, how they can get a hold of you guys and get your amazing material.
Well, obviously, we're not necessarily a think tank. We're more of an action tank on Capitol Hill, the Conservative Partnership. And as you know, we work with a number of conservative members, both in the House and the Senate, on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a senior partner there. But the big key, I think, and the tax bill is one example of that. Kind of behind the scenes on the One Big Beautiful Bill, when it was stalled, it was actually working with the Speaker and with the White House and everybody to try to get things done. So we try to make sure that the bad things stop and the good things get going, which is a full-time job in Washington, D.C.
It is, and you guys were amazing on both. You were amazing both in getting the first bill passed in 2017, and then Conservative Partnership Institute, which let's see, it's you and who else is involved in that
so
institute?
It's me, Senator DeMint, the former senator from South Carolina, Ed Corrigan, Rachel Bovard, and Wesley Denton, and those, and obviously they've got so much experience in in the Senate, and this everybody's talking about the standing filibuster and the Save America Act right now. A lot of that came from Rachel Bovard and Ed Corrigan before it now is the thing that everybody's talking about. But since this is about more money, one of the things that I think your listeners ought to know is about the capital gains rate and lowering it and adjusting it for inflation. That idea, obviously, is something you and I've talked about. But Ted Cruz is now pushing for it and said, that's what the president can do without having to pass legislation.
It's a big deal. You're right. We think the president can do it unilaterally. Jeff Yass and I had a piece in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago saying, let's index it, and at least let's index. This is one of our ideas, Mark, and I know our listeners have heard me talk a little bit about this, which is, one of the reasons housing costs have been high is because people are locked into their homes because of the capital gains tax. So we said, at least let's index capital gains for the sale of a house so older people can move out of their homes and maybe move into a, golf community or, assisted living. And then, young people could buy up those houses. But right now people can literally not afford to sell their house because they pay so much tax. So it's incredibly unfair and bad for the economy. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay. What is it like, Mark Meadows? So now, we have a war going on right now with Iran. Hopefully this will be over in less than a month. It looks like the military is doing an amazing job over there. But you've worked side by side with Donald Trump. And by the way, is it true this guy is working 16 hours a day?
Yeah, at least 16 hours a day. Actually, he's working more than that. I feel for Susie Wiles because, quite frankly, I didn't get any sleep the entire time. And especially when you've got stuff going on like this, you would think that the president is just myopically focused on one thing. But that's not the way that this president thinks. He'll be dealing with Iran, and I agree with you. Hopefully, it is strategic strikes that get over with in a matter of weeks, not months. But even with that, he can be focused on that and saying, okay, well, how are we going to make sure that we get capital gains tax down? How do we make sure that we advance legislation and make sure that the government's working for the American people? And he'll watch things. He does say, Steve, that TiVo is the greatest invention known to man. So he'll watch programs through the middle of the night. And as his chief of staff, I would get calls. The earliest or latest that I ever recall getting called was at 3:19 in the morning. And he called me and said, Mark, did I wake you? I said, no, sir, I had to get up to answer the phone anyways. And so but he would give me a to-do list. And then at 7:30 in the morning, he said, well, how are you coming on that list that I gave you last night? I said, well, sir, nobody in D.C. is actually open. They haven't even come into work yet. But that's the kind of president that we have in the Oval Office right now, and candidly, it's why the American economy is really doing as well as it is, because he is somebody that understands business and understands what moves the levers of power.
Well, it's very funny because, I love having you've been on my show before, and oftentimes I have Mick Mulvaney. I'm sure you know Mick, and you and him have exactly the same stories. And Mick said after working for him for, I think he was in about a year, he was just so completely exhausted. He said, I can't do this anymore. But it must be amazing working with someone who works that hard, tirelessly. And by the way, I don't always agree with Donald Trump. I agree with him probably 80% of the time. But I've always felt, Mark, even when I disagreed with him, I'm not a big fan of tariffs, as you know, but I've always felt like in his heart, every decision he makes is, will this make America great? Will it put America first? And I think that's what every president should do. You've been with him in the Oval Office a lot more than I have. Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, not only would I agree with that assessment, but here's the interesting thing, and you pointed out, and so you and Larry Kudlow and a few others were very open about your feeling on tariffs. But he's also one that's willing, knowing that you've got a different opinion than he does, he'll bring you in and have you argue it with other people. And that's the thing that people don't understand is that he may not agree with you, but it's not like, okay, I don't agree with Steve Moore, so he's not invited to the Oval legal anymore.
That's true.
In fact, I would be surprised that you don't have a hard pass that allows you to get in any time that you want.
Well, I just saw the president a few weeks ago. He's just on top of his game right now. No question about it, Mark. And so, we now have a situation where if we can get this war, over with and victorious, as we all want to see, we could bring peace and prosperity to the Middle East. It looks like we're doing that in Venezuela. One of the issues that I brought up with the president, he asked me about Cuba, and I said, look, Mr. President, if you could liberate Cuba, it would be like the Hong Kong of the Western Hemisphere if you just gave these people freedom. I think he wants his legacy to be a guy who spread freedom throughout the world.
Well, without a doubt, freedom always works, and freedom, candidly, you don't have to look any further than the peninsula of Korea. And so South Korea versus North Korea, you can look at the lights on a Google map. One is the 9th greatest economy in the world. The other is the 125th greatest economy in the world. And freedom is a line, and you can see it from aerial shots. But it's not just there. It's literally liberating Cuba would be a huge aspect, not just for many of my former friends and patriots who came from Cuba, but he's done it now in Venezuela. I do believe that Cuba is next. But can you imagine if we unleash the prosperity? Pun intended, unleash the prosperity in those countries as well as the Middle East. Listen, great economies make for peaceful neighbors, and I think it's something the president understands, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of his actions.
So, Mark, I agree with your assessment entirely, and I just thank God every night that this man is president. Any final thoughts about him? We got about 45 seconds left, Mark Meadows.
Yeah, so really start to continue to focus on a second reconciliation package that maybe the White House is not going to talk about, but I do think that we can get tax relief and the economy continue to be stimulated. Yep. You and Jeff, you're right on the capital gains thing. Let's keep talking about it.
Well, Mark, you are a national asset. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you'll come on again. Folks, this is The More Money Show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for joining on this first weekend of March, and I'm appreciative of listeners all over the country. We have stations in California, we have stations in Kansas City, St. Louis, we've got stations in Chicago, we've got stations that go all the way up to Maine and all the way down to Georgia. So thank you so much for joining the show, and we will be taking your calls later. But right now I wanted to tell you about one of the things that's going on that is problematic, and that is all of these blue states, not all of them, but many of them are raising taxes. And I live in Virginia, and in Virginia, the new governor there wants to tax everything from dog walkers to dog groomers to people who use Uber Eats, and everything that's delivered is going to have a big surtax on you. They're going to raise the income tax, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got what's going on in New York with the Mayor Mandami, who's saying he's going to have to raise taxes on everybody if they don't raise taxes on the top 1%. And then you've got a big initiative in California, the bluest of blue states, to have a wealth tax on millionaires and billionaires. And the millionaires and billionaires are flooding out of that state now. And now you also have a situation in Washington state, which is one of the 9 states that does not have an income tax, along with states like Texas, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, Tennessee, South Dakota, and a few others. And Washington state has always been a fairly rich state. It was the home of Amazon. It was the home of Starbucks. It was the home of Microsoft, in part because they had no income tax, and now they're getting perilously close to having an income tax there because they want to, make the system fairer, and that means everyone will be poorer. And now, the person who knows more about this subject, by the way, than probably anybody on the planet, is my long-term friend and mentor, Richard Vedder. You know Richard Vedder. He's a very famous economist from Ohio University, has written on these issues for decades. And so, Rich Vedder, thanks so much for joining.
Glad to be with you, Steve.
So, Rich, you know this as well as anyone. In fact, I think you wrote the very first study back in the late 70s or early 80s on how the states without an income tax were dramatically outperforming the states with high income taxes, the states like, New Jersey and California and, at that time, New York obviously had high taxes. And I think you even said at one point it was like about 1,000 people every day were leaving the high tax states for the low tax states. It's probably even more than that now.
Yeah, I think the numbers are greater. Depends on exactly how you define high tax or low tax, etc. But the numbers are greater. It's amazing that California, which joined the Union around 1850 and has just been the growth engine of the country population-wise ever since, in the 1980s it added 6 million people. You know how much what's happened to the population of California from 2020 to 2025? It fell. The population of California fell. And it's not that just because the Californians it's not because they don't make good lovers or something like that. It's not because of, although that may be true too, but that one I'll stay away from. It's just because high taxes and other things too, how the taxes get spent is often a negative factor, but this is what has happened. It doesn't take rocket science to see the population of Texas is booming. The population of Florida is booming. You don't have to be very smart to see that.
Yeah. And yet they're pretty stupid because they don't see it. And so Washington State was one of those 9 states that you measured as a state that was a fast growing state. And they are probably going to put in an inheritance tax, an income tax, a departure tax. And you know what? The rate would be as high as 9.5%. That would put them in maybe the top 10 in the highest tax. So they would go, Rich, from having one of the lowest income taxes in the country to one of the highest. That's not going to work out too well for them, is it?
No, it's going to be awful. They're going to have a mass out migration from places like Seattle to and by the way, in the state of Washington, there's a little, and this is true somewhat in Oregon, there is a sort of an intra-state rebellion going on, I think, and I don't know how strong it is. The people in the western part of Washington, who are relatively sane people, and more like the people, say, in Idaho or Utah and other states like that, fairly conservative people, hardworking people, they don't want income taxes. They don't want any of this. It's the people in the Seattle area that are pushing it, and it's going to destroy the state of Washington.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a website that we started on Unleash Prosperity called votewithyourfeet.com. I think a lot of our listeners are familiar with that. Go to votewithyourfeet.com and you can look at the most recent data from the IRS, from the Census Bureau about who's moving where. And the pattern is very clear here, Rich. And it's something you pioneered all the research on this, that the moving vans and the capital and all the money is leaving those high tax states, and it's going to places, as you said, like Texas and Florida and Idaho and Tennessee, et cetera. There's a little, we had a little cartoon in our, hotline a couple of weeks ago that had, one of those signs when you drive into a state and it said, welcome to Florida. We have no vacancies here because so many people are moving in. And so, why don't they get it? I mean, when I once debated Paul Krugman, the famous left-wing economist, on this, and I showed him the data that you put forward about all these people moving to these southern states and moving to low tax states. And they said, he said the reason they're doing that is because of the weather. They're moving to Florida because of the weather. Oh, yeah. And I said, well, gee, if that's the case, why are all these people moving from California? Because, Rich, nobody moves out of California to get better weather.
No, exactly. In fact, a state that's even worse than California in some ways is Hawaii. It's such a small state, we don't talk about it much. There's only 1 million people living there. The population of people are moving out of Hawaii. If there's anything that resembles paradise in weather, it's Hawaii. You can't beat Hawaii. And it has never snowed a day in Hawaii. It's nice all the time. And yet people are leaving Hawaii, of all places. But they're moving into the Dakotas. Now, no one ever claimed that the Dakotas were a climate paradise. I mean, this is just sheer nonsense, this weather argument.
It is. And by the way, you can't get a moving van and United Van Line moving van to move out of Hawaii. You gotta get an airplane to move out of Hawaii.
Yeah. Although speaking of moving van, you mentioned this earlier. I have a lot of fun every now and then. I go on to a website. I look at U-Haul, I guess. And I look at the price of renting a U-Haul in, say, New York City and moving to Austin, Texas. And then I look at the same trip the other way, the reverse direction from Austin to New York. And the cost of renting the U-Hauls are dramatically different. Why? Is because there are absolutely no U-Hauls available in New York City because no one is moving there. No one in their right mind is moving from Texas to New York. Yet there are tons of U-Hauls in Austin because everyone's moving to Texas. So you can rent a U-Haul for a nickel. It's more than that, obviously.
They want you to drive it back. They'll pay you to drive it back too.
Yeah, that's right. They actually do. Occasionally, they pay drivers to get them to get those. Yeah. So this is crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So, Rich, we've got to take a quick break. Can you hold on for a few minutes? I'd love to, because I want to talk to you about this war against Walmart and the big box retailers. You've done a big study on this, and I want people to be aware of it. Folks, we got to take a hard break now. This is the More Money Show. I'm economist Steve Moore. Don't forget to go to the hotline, that we put out every morning, which is free. Go to Unleash Prosperity now, unleashprosperity.com, and we will send it to you for free. My guest is Richard Vedder, the famous, eminent economist who knows more about where people are moving to and from than anybody in the country, and we'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend, the first full weekend of March of 2026. I'm talking to a friend and colleague and mentor, Richard Vedder. He is a famous economist at Ohio University, has been writing about the economy for 4 decades or more. And so, Rich, thanks again for joining. We were talking earlier with Richard Vedder about why are all the people moving from out of New York and California and Connecticut and these other states. And by the way, I want to just, before I leave that subject, I want to mention that my good friend Betsy McCoy is a good friend. She's an incredible force of nature. She's good on the economy. She's very good on healthcare issues, et cetera. She is trying to save Connecticut. She's trying to save Connecticut by repealing the income tax that was put into effect by Lowell Weicker back in, I think it was around 1991, 1992. And ever since that income tax came in, Richard Vedder, Connecticut keeps sinking like they're in quicksand.
Absolutely. Connecticut has become a basket case, and it's such a shame because, as you say, there was a time in the era of income taxes when Connecticut didn't have one in, say, the 1950s or 60s, and Connecticut was booming.
And look at them now.
There you have it.
And so, by the way, Rich, same thing with New Jersey. New Jersey didn't have an income tax, I think, till the mid-'60s.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And they were one of the richest places on the planet. We're
It's time everywhere you go. It's true. Compare. Since we're in that part of the United States, take New Hampshire and Vermont. There are two states in the Union that are more similar, topography-wise, weather-wise. Right. Those two states are happy. You look at the growth rates of those states over the last half century. The population of New Hampshire has consistently risen. Vermont, much less so, or even declined. Vermont, of course, is the state of Bernie Sanders and ultra woke lefty policies, high taxes, and so forth. New Hampshire has no income tax, has no sales tax either. The only state in the Union, by the way, that's true.
Yeah.
And New Hampshire's beaten the pants off of Vermont by any economic indicator.
It's just so obvious. It's just so frustrating to me that people in New York City would, for example, would vote for someone who was going to raise the taxes, or California would have this wealth tax. And as you just said, wealthy people just move away, and then they'll get less money. I mean, the top 1%, the top 2% in income in California and the top 2% of income in New York pay half the taxes. So if they leave, who's going to pay the taxes in these places? It seems pretty obvious to me, folks. Soak the rich never works. So I wanted to change directions in our last few minutes, Rich, and talk about this issue that you and I have written about. We were in the New York Post on this on Friday, yesterday, that there's something called the Robinson-Patman Act. It is an antitrust law that goes back to the 1930s. It was sort of part of the New Deal. By the way, one of the greatest myths of all time is that the New Deal was a success. It was not a success. It was a failure. But most antitrust laws, anti-monopoly laws, are intended to try to make sure that powerful companies don't raise prices on consumers, right? And yet, in this case, the Robinson-Patman Act is suing companies like Walmart for lowering prices. I mean, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, Rich.
It is, and it was put in special interest legislation that was put in the 1930s. Now, the 1930s was a period of spectacularly bad legislation. The New Deal was a failure. We had 10 years of double-digit unemployment. Never had that before in history, nor since. All kinds of mistakes were made during that period, but one of which was Robinson-Patman in 1936. And I live, Steve, in a small town in Appalachian, Ohio, on the edge in Appalachia, high poverty rate and so forth. The biggest thing that has been raised the quality of life in my town, and since I've been here 60 years, has been when Walmart came to town, because Walmart brought lower prices, more goods you couldn't find anywhere before, and you could drive to this store with a big parking lot and go in there, clean, and buy, if you want to buy a soda or you want to buy whatever you want to buy, and it would be 10-20% cheaper often, or more, than in the other stores in town. And so it was a liberating moment for our community. It was like, free at last. We're now joining the big time. We're getting the same kind of opportunities that the big cities have. Because Sam Walton recognized that there was an opportunity to serve these kind of communities. Right. And yet, Robinson-Patman is an example of a law. In fact, it is the example of a law that is aiming to negate that, to prevent that from happening.
Right. It's the craziest thing, and you can't make this stuff up. I just want to reiterate here that the under Biden in his last days in office, his idiot, Federal Trade Commission had Lena Khan, who believes that every company that makes a profit in America is a monopoly. And this law basically says you cannot cut prices. And that makes no sense, right? That makes no sense. We want companies to cut prices. We want things more affordable. And Rich, the reason they say you can't, like a Walmart or a Costco or an Amazon can't, quote, cut prices, which obviously is a benefit to consumers, is it's anti-competitive. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. This was put in the 30s, and in the 30s, we started to get, for the first time in the nation's history, grocery stores that, in large numbers, 500, 1,000 stores and so forth. Mm-hmm. The biggest at the time was something called A&P.
I remember.
And, like we have many grocery chains today. And it was competing with these mom and pop little stores on the corner. You walk in and you could buy a very limited amount of goods there, and you had to pay pretty high prices. And so the A&P came in, and some other chains, later on Safeway in California and so on, and Walmart, and to lower prices, offer lower prices, and the old retailers who fought it. They hired lobbyists, no doubt. I don't remember the precise details to keep this from happening. So it was special interest legislation designed to aid a small number of businesses at the expense of the American public, period.
That's right. And it's, one of my favorite economists is Joseph Schumpeter, who talked about creative destruction. That's what Walmart and Costco and these discounters do. They bring in the new generation. But it's just so infuriating here. And by the way, we've got about a minute and a half left. You wrote an amazing book back a number of years ago about Walmart. And I think I remember you said something in the book like there's no anti-poverty program ever invented by government that has done more to lift the incomes and the purchasing power of low-income people more than Walmart.
Yeah, no. Sam Walton should be put on a $5 bill or a $10 bill or something. He sure as hell done more for our nation and its people than some other names. We should build a statue for Sam Walton somewhere.
Yeah. And by the way, we now have some of these companies that are even giving lower prices than Walmart. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, competition.
Yeah, well, that's right. Walmart. Now, Amazon came along and now last year passed Walmart in sales. Well, they're both bargain basements compared with some of the old forms of retailing, and they've opened opportunities for American consumers that didn't exist.
So I think the bottom line here is we want to get rid of these lawsuits against companies that are cutting prices. That makes no sense to me. I don't think it makes sense to any of us, but it's a real clear and present danger. Folks, thanks for listening to the first hour of the More Money Show. For many of these stations, we'll be back in the next hour, so please stay with us. This is the More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is the second hour of the More Money Show. Thank you so much for listening in. I so much appreciate our audience. I always say that we have the smartest audience in America. It's such a privilege to be on WABC, which is the number one talk radio station in these United States. So I hope you're having a wonderful weekend in this first full weekend of March. I wanted to just start this conversation. We're going to talk about things money, things finance, things politics throughout the next hour. And by the way, we're like the only station. You don't change your radio dial because every other station is some canned commercials or, canned shows. We're live. We're in color. We will be taking your calls later in the show because I want to talk to you about what you think about this economy, which has hit a bit of a bump in the road over the last week or so with a lousy jobs report that was disappointing. And then I'm just looking at my notes right now. I just Googled this a minute ago. So the price of oil right now has risen to $91 a barrel. That's a very, very high price compared to the $50 we were paying a few months ago. So this is problematic for the economy. Obviously, this is hopefully short-term pain for long-term gain as we prevail in Iran. But a $91 a barrel of oil for many of you in the Northeast, in the New York area, you're talking about $4 a gallon or more at the gas tank for gas. But I do think that this is going to be very temporary. There's no country that has more oil and gas than the United States. Trump is taking all the steps to increase our energy production. And incidentally, thank God for drill, baby drill, because we are now pretty much energy independent. In fact, we're an exporter of oil and gas now, and that was not the case 20, 30, 40 years ago. So we will get through this. We will not be damaged nearly as much as we were in the 1970s when we'd had flare-ups in the Middle East. But it does cause a problem because the Middle East, other than the United States, is the major producer of oil in the world. And so they have used that strategic advantage to hold the world and hold the American economy hostage in the past. But I'm here to tell you they cannot do that any longer because we produce more oil and gas than they do. And we have more of it, by the way. So this is a story that I think will have a happy ending, no doubt. Now, the issue I want you all to think about, because my next guest is going to be Steve Del Bianco, who runs a group called Net Choice. He's an expert on the technology industry. He is an expert on the next generation of AI and robotics, which is coming very rapidly. We've talked about this week after week on this show. I wanted to bring on one of the world's experts. He works with Google. He works with Amazon. He works with Meta and all the major companies that are involved in this revolution. And we're going to talk to him about what comes next. How do we make sure that we can dominate this industry so that China does not dominate it? Because we have to win this race for the next generation of technology, just like in the 1990s and 2000s, we won the race. We obliterated the enemies and the competitors when it came to the internet age with great companies like Google and Amazon and Apple and now NVIDIA. So we've got to make sure we win this, and we've got to make sure we do it the right way. The question I want you all to ponder is, are you excited about this revolution? It's going to change things in an incredible way. I think in almost all ways positive, although there will be displacement, no question about it. And I know people are nervous about it. So later on in the show, I want to take your calls. You tell me, are you excited about robotics? Are you excited about the AI potential for health, for incredible increases, improvement? Every American will have a robot at their disposal that will do anything that you want them to do for you. It's going to be an amazing future, but people are nervous about it. And there's all sorts of laws that are being erected right now to try to stop the revolution. It's almost like trying to hold the future off so that we don't lead the world. And I want us to lead the world. And I guarantee you this revolution is going to be amazing. I just hope I can live to see the amazing changes that are coming. So we're going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'll have Steve Del Bianco on telling us about what we have to do to ensure that we're number one, and also to maybe assuage some of your fears about this. And then later in the show, I'll take your calls. By the way, that number for the More Money hotline is 1-800-848-9222. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I'm economist Steve Moore. Don't forget to sign up for our free hotline at the unleashprosperity.com. Just go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up for the free economic newsletter that comes out every morning. A lot of the subjects we talk about on the show, we cover in that hotline. And one of the big issues that we've been covering a lot lately, what I think the biggest economic and national security and economic security issue for our country is, will we continue to lead the technology age that we live in, what I call the digital age? And we're now moving past the internet, although the internet's still going to be integral, into an age of robotics in terms of AI, which is going to be incredible. But a lot of people are nervous about it. So I wanted to bring on Steve Del Bianco, who is the CEO of a group called Net Choice. And he is an expert on these issues. So listen carefully to what he has to say. Steve Del Bianco, thanks so much for joining.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me. I want to make sure your listeners know that your hotline is required reading for my entire team every day. And I encourage your listeners to subscribe.
Well, thank you, Steve. And so I want to get right into it because there's so much I want to cover with you. You and I talk pretty regularly. People are nervous about AI. They're nervous about data centers. They're worried about transmission lines. And so can you walk people down from the ledge? Because a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to lose my job or I'm going to die of cancer because of transmission lines. And it seems like there's a whole mythology out there about this coming revolution.
Steve, you're right. I travel all around the country, town hall meetings with politicians. I go to planning commission meetings, state legislatures, and I have for 6 years as my business has tried to help America's major tech companies to build data centers around the country. These are the companies that are in the Magnificent Seven. Your listeners all have them in their retirement accounts: Apple, Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon, NVIDIA, all of those companies. And they're building about one data center every week. We have for many years. And we have to do
one a week?
One a week on average, Steve.
Wow.
Even before AI came along. And that's for one simple reason. Take a look at your phone. Look at all the photos, videos. Look at all the e-commerce that you do, all the messages you send where you attach those photos or videos, or social media where you share them. And what you'll also realize is that America's users, we almost never delete our old photos, videos, and messages. So everything in there is accumulating. More and more businesses are moving online through cloud services. And everybody loves the cloud. You buy a new phone and the cloud enables you to transfer everything from old phone to new phone. But look, the cloud doesn't live in the clouds, right? The cloud is in a big white building about the size of an aircraft carrier. And that building costs roughly $1 billion to construct. And most of that cost.
Wow. $1 billion. Wow.
That's right. And most of the cost is the servers that go inside. And, Steve,
by the way, so let me just interrupt you for 1 second, Steve. So, but the technology companies are building these, right? I mean, they're underrating the cost of building these data centers.
They're paying the full cost. There's not a dime of government or taxpayer money, and the private sector is building all of the tools that all of your listeners use every day. The mapping. And this
is an investment binge. These things are constructed with union workers. They pay taxes too, right? I mean, in Loudoun County, right outside where I live, it's one of the major taxpayers in the whole counties that pays for the schools, pays for the playgrounds, pays for the fire department. All the public services are largely financed because of these data centers.
45%.
It's over half the tax revenue in Loudoun County. It's not just the investments that are covered. They've also been able to offer tax relief, property tax relief to all of us who live in Loudoun County. For 10 straight years, Loudoun County has reduced the rate that residents pay on your property taxes. They've reduced it because data centers have picked up more and more of it.
And so the other anxiety, so the point is this is economic development for a lot of these smaller towns because they're not building these data centers in the middle of big cities. These are oftentimes in exurbs and suburbs. It brings tax revenue in, brings jobs in. Why are people opposed to this?
There's a general anxiety about change, and we live in an anxious time. This country has never been buffeted by so many changing circumstances and a political divide, and it's completely understandable why people of all walks of life are nervous. And they also, maybe they don't trust what they're hearing on the news or what they hear from businesses. So a lot of them need to see it with their own eyes. And that's usually the way that we do it. We explain why we need data centers. And it's because you, customers, need data centers. We're not building them for ourselves. And we talk about the fact that around the country, there are rural areas or just outside of the suburbs where a county has abundant land that's affordable. And they are welcoming with open arms a data center that invests $1 billion, has two years of construction with 2,000 workers pouring money into the local economy. And then when the data center opens, it employs 200 high school or trade school grads at an average of 6 figures. These are 200 guys that don't have to move to the big city to have a career and raise a family of their own. And these are also communities where the county commissioners are ecstatic about the idea of doubling their property tax revenue, giving relief to property tax payers, as well as spending money on infrastructure. But there's one critical ingredient, and it's
Steve,
power. We have to have accessibility to power.
So I think a lot of people are confused about what this revolution is about. By the way, I bet a lot of people don't even know what a data center is. What is a data center, Steve Del Bianco?
2-story building, like I said, about the same footprint as a aircraft carrier. And inside are roughly 2 floors. And along each floor are racks. There are racks of servers, approximately 6 or 7 feet tall. And on those racks are server blades. Those server blades have storage, the same kind of storage you have on your computer and your phone. Oh, but they also have AI chips from NVIDIA and other American companies. And those AI chips mean that data center uses even more electricity to power AI.
The bottom line, though, is that you don't have internet without these data centers, right? You're not going to have a lot of the technology. The data centers are the sort of the brain center of this whole operation.
They are. And that the cloud has always been in a data center. And the cloud is how we are able to access services. Why I can look at archives of More Money on WABC's website. That's all in the cloud. It's not quote unquote in the internet. It's in a cloud storage facility, and the internet enables us to have access to it.
So what would happen if the data center, if we fall behind a data center? For example, just one practical application. I don't even carry money around anymore, Steve. I mean, if somebody comes and robs me, I maybe have $20 in my wallet, but every financial transaction I make is right on my Apple phone. I don't, it's amazing that just all of these financial transactions are taking place in the cloud through data centers. And so if they go down, we're going to be screwed, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So the companies that belong to NetChoice are constantly constructing data centers. Like I said, the average is about 1 a week or 50 a year. And nowadays, with the advent of AI, those data centers are somewhat larger and burn more electricity because AI requires more electricity to do the kind of processing that happens when, let's say that you and I are talking to our phone and it's converting our voice to text. That's AI. That burns electricity. Or we're using a chatbot like ChatGPT or Claude, and we're doing research. Or let's suppose we're in Google search, and when the search results come back, a lot of your listeners know that Google will do an AI overview of your search results. Well, that's using AI and burning electricity. The good news here is that every time our economy has ever grown, we've also grown the amount of electricity we use. This is true since the Industrial Revolution. Electricity growth is not a problem. It's merely a challenge we need to solve. And for 30 years, America has used practically the same amount of electricity. The average annual growth rate, compound annual growth rate for 30 years is less than 0.5%. We just didn't use a lot of electricity as we got rid of our manufacturing base, and all of our appliances became significantly more efficient in using electricity. But look, those days are over. Those days are over. We need more electricity in the country.
So, Steve, we got to take a quick break. Can you hold on for one more segment? Because if you can, I'd love to ask what I want to discuss with you in our second segment, because this is fascinating, folks. This is about why the digital revolution, AI, robotics is going to be so amazing for your life. Can you talk when we get back, Steve, about why people should be excited about this future?
Of course.
Okay, we'll take a quick break then. This is the More Money Show. I'm talking to Steve Del Bianco of NetChoice, and we're going to explain to you why you should not be nervous but excited about this incredible future of robotics and AI. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is Steve Moore. We're back with the More Money Show. I've got just a few minutes left with my good friend Steve Del Bianco. In a few minutes, we're going to be talking about a cool study that I've been involved with my friend Tom Phillipson about what it would be worth to the country if we could cure cancer. But this story that we're talking about now is about as big as curing cancer. I'm talking to Steve Del Bianco about, and I'm going to pose this question to him. Steve, we only got about 4 or 5 minutes left, but tell people, because when I talk to people about AI and robotics, they're nervous. They, oh my God, the robots are going to take my job and I'm not going to have anything to do and I'm going to be poor and destitute in the street. And they think that they're going to be, pollution from the AI centers and all of these myths. So just tell people, maybe the best thing would be, tell us why people should be excited about this future that's coming so quickly in terms of this revolution in technology.
Steve, all of AI is an expansion that builds on us. It builds on human knowledge, human creativity. The way we train an AI model is to look at what humans have done, learn from it enough that AI can help humans and help you to do your writing, your analysis, your summary. I mean, think about doing a Google search 3 years ago, and to brings back a dozen results, you've got to go to each of those result pages, read them over, figure out if it's relevant, and you're going to run out of attention span before you make it through the search results. But AI changes everything. AI is superb at using our language that we've taught it to dive into those results and come back with analysis and summary of your search results. That's what you see in AI overview when you do a Google search today. So that's an accessible way to understand, it is making me more efficient. But think about the creativity side. Based on the human knowledge that has been loaded into AI, it can create images, create video. On the medical field, AI is enabling us to do protein folding, medical device discovery, disease analysis, to synthesize and then test multiple approaches to solve some of the diseases and chronic problems we're having. It can also help with healthier living based on nutrition, energy production, stronger materials, all of which should double each of us, our personal productivity. In other words, we ought to be able to do twice as much higher quality work when it comes to analysis, writing, discovery, and productivity.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just in the last couple of minutes, because I'm going to be talking to Tom Phillipson about this idea of a cure for cancer, what you're saying is that this whole AI revolution will bring us much closer to these kinds of cures and winning the race for the cure.
It's so true. And any of your listeners can validate it for themselves. Jump into ChatGPT or use Google search, and you'll see how the computer is learned from our work in order to make our work more productive. Now, if each of us is twice as productive as we used to be, that means a business might need half as many people to do the work. And they're going to move those people to other aspects of the project, or people will change their careers. So it's dramatically important for people to embrace and understand how they can use AI to improve their marketability in the job market. And I don't want to necessarily panic people too much, because every month the American economy sheds 5 million jobs. I mean, let that sink in. Every month we have 5 million jobs that disappear through the changes of businesses, productivity gains, import, competition, whatever it is. But each month our economy, Steve, creates 5.1 million jobs. And this has been true for 30 years. Yeah. It doesn't happen.
Well, Steve Del Bianco,
Americans.
Thank you. Yeah, this is an amazing story. You're at the very tip of the spear of this. Let's have you on more often, because it's exciting and it's going to be an incredible revolution. And this is a good lead in. So thanks, Steve, for coming on. I want to bring on my friend Tom Phillipson, who is one of the leading economists in the country. He was the head of the Council of Economic Advisors for Donald J. Trump in his first term. He's at University of Chicago. He's He's one of the experts on health economics. And Tom and I have done a study that we'll be coming out with. We want to give you a sneak preview on this. It's going to be officially released on Monday about what it would be worth to Americans if we could win the race for the cure, if we can speed it up and eradicate this horrible disease. So, Tom, thanks so much for joining.
Great to be with you, Steve.
So, give us the summary of like how this came about. What are some of the principal findings of the study? Because this is something everyone is very afraid of getting cancer. I mean, it's a terrifying experience. If everyone knows someone with a family member or friend who's had cancer. Is it possible that we could eradicate this disease?
Yeah, I mean, we have the medical progress that has made a lot of headway recently. But if you think about, we were basically trying to value what's the value of getting rid of a major cause of death in the U.S. And if you think about anyone you know or yourself, what's the most important asset you have? And what's the most important asset you have in life?
Your health.
Your health, essentially.
Yes.
Everything becomes second. If you're sick, everything else, your material assets, your consumption becomes sort of a second order issue. So therefore, when you value improvements in health using economic metrics out there, which have been established and are used by the federal government in any kind of cost-benefit assessments of policies that affect health, when you value the reduction in mortality from eliminating cancer, you get very, very large number because health is so valuable, essentially. So we found that if you look at a 35-year period starting in 2030, and there's about a $186 trillion value of eliminating the 30 million deaths, essentially.
By the way, that's 186 trillion. That's trillion with a T, not billion with a B. Trillion dollars.
Yeah, and that's the reason you get such large numbers is because people have demonstrated with their behavior when they're trading off mortality risk, let's say, and wages in very dangerous jobs. Those are the numbers you get for a given life year that you save. Yes. And we're saving about 380 million life years if we were to get rid of cancer. Yeah.
And so, this is amazing. And so one of the results of the study is $15,000. It's the equivalent if we get this cure for cancer. And as you said, we're making incredible strides. The survival rates from cancer continue to improve. But I think in the study it says $15,000 per American per year is sort of the value of having this cure.
Yeah. No, I mean, we have tried Nixon launched the war on cancer, but we didn't have the technological sort of momentum which we currently have with, cell therapies coming into cancer. Mm-hmm. We have the cancer vaccines coming in. We also have these through companies like Grail and others. We have multi-cancer blood tests, which, the key to curing cancer many times is to catch it early as opposed to going in and doing colonoscopy, which everyone hates and therefore doesn't do it. Everyone doesn't like that type of screening. So now they're developing new technology where you just pick your finger and you can basically test for 50 different cancers at the same time. Okay. And that will be an enormously valuable thing if those technologies develop, because then we're catching cancers in stage 1 and then 2 instead of 3 and 4 when they're much more deadly.
And how about the big advances in terms of, years of life would be to conquer the childhood cancers and those, and people, by the way, I know who've, tragically lost a child to cancer, they would give everything they have, Thomas, everything they have to have a cure. So that this is, emphasizing the point that you're making, that the value of saving lives is just so enormous.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it from the patient's perspective as opposed to the loved one. So whenever you have someone die from cancer, particularly if it's a child, but also if there's very old individuals, the whole family suffers and are presumably that's something which is almost equally valuable for the loved ones left behind. And we're only doing it from the patient's perspective. So in some sense, this huge number is us underestimating the value of getting rid of cancer.
Well, Thomas Phillipson, thanks for doing this study. It will be out on Monday. People can go to unleashprosperity.com and pick up that study. It is very exciting, and this can happen, folks. We can win the race for the cure, and the economic benefits are in the over $100 trillion. We'll be right back, folks. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back, folks. This is The More Money Show. Thank you again so much for joining in on a Saturday afternoon. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend. I'm finishing my conversation with Thomas Phillipson, who was the head of the Council of Economic Advisors for Donald J. Trump in his first term. He is an economist at the University of Chicago, published everywhere. He also works with me at Unleash Prosperity, doing amazing work on public policy. And we're talking about maybe one of the most important public policy issues of our times, which is how do we win the race for the cure for cancer? And if we do, what is the value? What is it worth to us as citizens of this great country if we're able to conquer this horrible, horrible disease? I think it's the second leading killer, next to heart disease. So, Tom Phillipson, I want to ask you about one of the frustrations that people have about new drugs when they are developed, and you know that it on average costs sometimes $1 billion to bring a new drug to market, with all the research and development and the testing and so on. And I'm frustrated, and so many of the people in this pharmaceutical industry are frustrated that it takes so long to get through the drug approval process at the FDA. And economist who I knew, and I think you knew him too, Milton Friedman, one of the greatest economists the last 100 years, used to say the FDA is killing people because they're keeping life-saving drugs off of the market and denying people access to them. How do we fix this problem?
Yeah, it's an enormous problem. It takes many times a decade from start to finish going through FDA, and you know, that's an enormous delay. Think about other businesses. Yeah. If we had software development that took a decade from start to finish, we would be all logging into our AOL accounts right now, essentially. So, I mean, it's a shame that it should take us. It's not benefiting people. It's well intended, but it's not benefiting patients at all. Essentially, the way it should be done is essentially that the way we did it with Operation Warp Speed, which everyone agrees it was very valuable. And if it's valuable for COVID patients, why isn't it valuable for any other diseases? It's equally valuable for other diseases. And the way we sold it to the president at the time, he's a real estate developer, essentially. He's very frustrated with permit delays in real estate and infrastructure development. He actually tried to do a lot to reduce infrastructure development permit delays. It's the same issue for not for real estate developers, for drug developers that are facing FDA, essentially, with permit delays of getting on the market. And those delays are a major hurdle, not only for the patients who can't get the drugs, it's basically raising the cost of development, so you don't even see companies trying to go to market because of these hurdles. Like you said, it's about 10 years, but also now up to $3 billion per successful drug, and that's including the cost of failure.
Unbelievable.
So the 90% of drugs fail from start to finish at FDA, which is also very troublesome.
Unbelievable. So, we have one of our members of our Unleash Prosperity who's in the business of financing new drug development, and they have a drug that is very, very promising in terms of treating an ALS type of disease. It's not ALS, but it's very similar in terms of, decapitating your neurological system. And it's a terrible disease, horrible, crippling disease. And the FDA is just sitting on it, and they're not allowing. And my feeling is it's inhumane. It's cruel. If the people want to take these drugs, why should the government regulators tell? And by the way, it's been proven safe. So there's no negative effects of it. Why not let people use it?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have in many markets that the government comes in and regulates quality of products. We can see the government regulating safety. We have that in several markets, cars and other ones. But the quality of the product, meaning what in drug language is called effectiveness of the drug, is something that's rare, is unique to drugs many times. And that doesn't make any sense for the following reason. We can have FDA regulate safety, which is done in these early trials called phase 1 trials, as opposed to 2 and 3, which is more about the quality of the drug. And we can have them clear the safety, but the private market has already figured out how to deal with effectiveness without FDA. And the reason is because of so-called off-label use. Once a drug is approved by FDA, it can be used by doctors for any use. And doctors and the medical community figure out quickly which ones are useful for what diseases, even though FDA hasn't approved it yet. So they basically have demonstrated with off-label use that the private sector can determine what works or not without FDA, essentially. And for cancer, that's a huge component of use of cancer drugs. We were talking about cancer earlier. Yeah, for cancer, a lot of use is off-label use, which means FDA has not approved it, but the private sector has figured out what works or not, essentially. And we can do that for a lot more drugs than just have the government clear safety. And that would cut development times at the FDA from a decade down to a couple of years or a year.
Yeah, a lot of time these companies run out of money before they can bring the drug to market because, the difference between having the drug on the market in, say, 5 years versus 10 years, that's an enormous risk that these investors take with their private capital, and then they just give up, and it's just a terrible, terrible thing. Thomas Phillipson, thanks so much for joining. He is a former member of the Council of Economic Advisors under Donald Trump and is also at University of Chicago. And keep your eye out for that study, folks, on cancer. It is coming out Monday morning. Incredible results. It is going to not only be an incredible health breakthrough when we come up with this cure for cancer, but it is going to do enormous things for our economy as well. When we get back, folks, I will be taking your calls. This is the More Money Show. We are live. We are in color. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-WABC is our More Money hotline. Love to hear from you about any of the stuff we've been talking about. Are you worried about AI? Do you think we can win the race for the cure for cancer? How are you feeling about what's happening with the oil prices? It's open mic time. I'll take your calls. 1-800-848-9222. I'm sorry, 1-800-848-9222 when we come right back with the More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. I think next week we come out with the NCAA tournament, so that's going to be fun to watch. In basketball, I'm a big college basketball and football fan. We've got our lines are lit up. We have one open line. If you want to join the call, the show, we're talking about kind of open mic, but I want to get your thoughts about AI. Are you worried about it? Do you see the advantages and what it's going to do for our country and why it's so important that we beat China to the punch on this one? We're talking about cancer. We think we can win the race for the cure for cancer in the next 10 years. And if we do, what would be the economic advantages of that? We estimate over $100 trillion of added value to the world and to the United States if we can win the race for the cure. All of these things are open for discussion, and we've got already a bunch of people waiting on the line. So let us start, and we're going to quickly go through people because we don't have time for everyone. I'm going to try to get through as many of these calls as we can. We'll start with Steve from New Jersey. Steve, what do you got?
Hey, Steve. Steve, it's a mixed bag to me. AI will have an impact on more of the white-collar jobs. However, Steve, and this impacts my area, there's still companies that will not compromise. Once you put it on AI, it's out in the public domain. Companies want to protect their intellectual property, proprietary confidential information. So to me, the impact, while it could be substantial, 10% or more, it's going to be a lot less than people think, the impact of AI on the private sector, on the white collar jobs, for the reasons I just said. Go back to the blue collar, manufacturing. This is where I disagree with you on the tariffs. One of the reasons in tariffs is to bring that manufacturing back, and many of those jobs, AI is not going to be able to do them. All right, so I understand your version. I understand your version of tariffs that goes back 100 years, the stock market crash, and the Great. I get it, but still, they were misapplied then. They're being properly applied. Plus, you're going to have jobs.
All right, Steve, I got it. I'm going to cut you off because I've got a bunch of callers. I get your point, and I'm just going to say something quickly about tariffs. It is true I'm not a big fan of tariffs, although I'm very proud of some of the trade deals that Trump has gotten. I love that. The fact that he is bringing jobs back to the United States, but he lost in court. And so he cannot do this without Congress. I don't think he should be able to, any president should be able to raise taxes without congressional approval. But if you look at the situation right now, we're going to have to give back $125 billion of tariff revenue to the people who paid them because of the court decision, which I think was correct. But in terms of how this will affect blue collar jobs, AI, remember these plants, these massive plants that have to be built every few weeks, for the data centers and the power stations and the transmission lines, that's all going to be built with American workers. So this is going to create jobs. It's not going to destroy them, in my humble opinion. Okay, let's go to Tony in New Jersey.
Doing, Steve. I was thinking about AI. It's going to need a lot of electricity. What if
you better believe it.
Build portable nuclear power plants at the sites.
Yes.
The Navy has that already with their submarine fleet, and they would hire a lot of blue collar workers to run these plants.
Yeah.
What's the possibility of that happening?
Yeah, great point. Tony, thank you for calling. That's why I take people's calls, because you have so many brilliant comments, and you're exactly right. The big key to this is making sure we have the energy, because these data centers use enormous amounts of energy. So does the internet, and so does the robotics that's coming. They use energy. By the way, in 20 years, everybody's going to have their own robot. It's going to do things that you want. It'll wash your dishes for you. It'll clean your house for you. It'll do a lot of the menial work that you don't want to do. It'll be your servant, basically. That's a pretty cool thing. But it does take a lot of energy, and we're going to need nuclear power plants. We're going to need all of our energy, including green energy, but green energy is a small niche of this. About 80% of the energy is going to have to come from nuclear power, natural gas, clean coal, and oil. And that's just a fact. Maybe some of these new things like geothermal could work. I'm open-minded to anything that can work if it is economical, so we ought to do that. Okay, we've got a couple of more callers on the line, including first, we got two Roberts. Let's start with Robert who called in all the way from North Carolina.
Hi, Steve.
Robert, you're on.
Hi. Diesel prices affect the economy more than anything, because almost everything is shipped using trucks and trains, which require diesel. Now, if refining the heavy Venezuelan oil will help, but Canada has been withholding their heavy oil, which we can refine a lot of diesel and heating oil from.
Yep.
That's keeping the prices up.
Yeah, look, I mean, we need our energy, all sources of energy. We're going to need it all, folks, because this is an energy revolution that is going on. The robotics, the AI are going to use, by some estimates, tripling our energy demand over the next 15 years. I'm worried about whether the grid system can handle that. That's why I thought it was kind of stupid to say, let's put the entire transportation system on the electric grid. I'm not against electric vehicles, but my God, the electric grid system is very vulnerable, can't handle the power demands, and and then you're going to have blackouts and brownouts, which causes all sorts of chaos. So I'm for all of the above energy. We should use it all to the extent we can produce it here at home. I mean, my God, we have so much coal, we have so much natural gas, we have so much oil. I was out in California, right off the coast of Sacramento. Of Santa Barbara. There's an enormous find of oil. They can pump it right. They can drill it below the beach line and bring it in, and that would be an incredible thing. So let's use everything we got so that we don't have to depend on the Middle East. We have one more Robert on. I think this is Robert from New York. Robert, what do you got?
Robert from Westfield. With the AI explosion about to occur, would it be better to invest in silver or gold?
I think we lost Robert there, so I couldn't quite catch his.
Who's saying it'd be better to invest in silver?
I don't know about that. I mean, gold and silver are very expensive right now, but by the way, the gold price has gone up by more than 50% in the last year. So we have seen big increases in gold and silver, but over the long run, you want to invest in real assets, things that have a real return. Gold doesn't have a real return. It's a place you go for safety, and I do think everyone should have some gold in your portfolio and maybe some silver too. They're kind of the safety zone of your portfolio. But my God, over the last 40 years, stocks above inflation have been growing at about a 7% real rate of return. So if you know anything about the power of compound interest, just think about that. I mean, I've told this story many times before on this show, but when I first came to Washington in 1983, we had a Dow Jones at 1,000. Now we got a Dow just below 50,000. So think about the incredible gains. If you had just put $1,000 into the Dow back in 1983, that would be worth $50,000 now. So it's an amazing thing how we've seen the growth of our assets in this country, and it's because of our intellectual prowess. Look, I'm going to bring up one more subject before we have to break up, and that is what are we going to do about the cancerous growth of our debt in Washington, D.C., and our inability to cut unnecessary government spending. We are now spending, folks, $7 trillion a year. It is the largest enterprise in the world is the United States government. I've been in the swamp of Washington, D.C. now for 40 years. I'll tell you, we have a government that is far too big, far too expensive. We can, in my estimation, and now look, I'm pretty libertarian. I don't think we need a lot of government. I truly believe that we could have better public services in this country for half the cost if we got rid of the waste, the fraud, the abuse, the stealing, the duplication, the massive pay that goes, the corruption. You've seen the corruption firsthand this past year with what's going on in Minnesota and California, and the fact that people are just ripping off taxpayers. I do worry about our national debt. I want to see economic growth. I want to see people prosper in this country. I think we're heading into one of the greatest productivity revolutions in the history of the world with this AI revolution. I wanted to mention to you all, I'm on the board. I think some of you know this. I'm on the board of a company called Lightspeed. At Lightspeed, what we do is we build houses with robots. Go, if you want to have fun, go to lightspeed.com and you will see the video of what these robots are doing. They're literally building 60 to 70% of the house. The robots are doing that. They're building the outside structures. They're screwing in the screws. They're laying the cement. All of these things are amazing, and they're being done by robots. So this revolution is coming. And what this means is that the cost of buying a house will fall in half, because we can build houses. Now, we're not quite there yet. This is a new technology. It'll probably take a few years, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years to get it up and running on a big scale, but we'll be able to build houses with 50% less man hours, 50% less cost, and 50% faster. That's the kind of thing that AI is going to do. As I said earlier, with the health technologies that are going on, that AI is facilitating. We can eradicate diseases. We can give sight to the blind. We can have people rise out of their wheelchairs and walk. These are we're capable of doing this in the near future. It's so damn exciting. And so don't be afraid. Look, I understand that people may, what's going to happen to my job? And that's an understandable thing. But folks, this is going to be an incredible revolution. By the way, think about it. I mean, let's think big. How long will it be before we have flying cars? Remember the old Jetsons cartoons where, the cars are flying all over the place. I predict, in 15 or 20 years, there will be flying cars, and maybe we won't need transit systems and so on. You'll just get in your little flying car and you'll fly off to wherever you want to go. And instead of having to get on an airline, you can do it basically for free. All of these things are coming. It is very exciting. We can revolutionize every aspect of human life. And we'll gain more years of life in this country. And it's all going to be led by these United States of America. We are going to be the leader. We're going to beat the pants off of China. I know we are. Finally, thank you, Donald Trump, for everything you're doing to liberate people around the world. I don't believe that America should be the world's policeman, but you are bringing freedom and prosperity to the entire planet. And that may well be Donald Trump's legacy when we talk about him 50 and 100 years from now. Folks, this has been the More Money Show. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful weekend. We'll be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great weekend, folks, and stay safe and get out and get some exercise on a wonderful Saturday.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially healthcare. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.